John Wagner. John is the Associate Laboratory Director at Idaho National Lab's Nuclear Science and Technology Directorate. His previous roles included Director of Domestic Programs in NS&T, as well as Director of the Technical Integration Office for the DOE-NE Light Water Reactor Sustainability Program at Idaho National Labs. Wagner initially joined Idaho as the Chief Scientist at the Materials and Fuels Complex in 2016. He has more than 20 years of experience performing research and managing and leading research and development projects, programs, and organizations. In 2014, John became the Director of the Research and Nuclear Systems Division, with responsibility for management, direction, and leadership to focus and integrate the 7 research and development groups under that directorate. He is a fellow of the American Nuclear Society and a recipient of the 2013 E.O. Lawrence Award. We're really honored to have you here today, John. We look forward to your thoughts about what's happening at the lab and the challenges that it's addressing in today's climate. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Let's see, I think I need a prompt to share my screen.
Albert, can we?
Yeah, John, you should have received that prompt. I can resend it.
Please do, I don't see it.
Okay, 1 second. Did you receive it now?
I did. Whoa, okay, so sorry about the where we joined. Hopefully you can hear me and see my screen.
Coming through that.
Is that correct, please?
Yes, you're good.
Pardon? Okay,
You're good
excellent, thank you. All right, good morning to all, or good afternoon, depending on where exactly you're at. Thanks for the opportunity to join you today. I thought with my time, I'd do a couple things. I'd try to briefly introduce you to the Idaho National Laboratory and then focus on what's new at Idaho National Laboratory. You are hearing from the ALD for Nuclear Science and Technology, so you're going to get more of a focus on what's new in the nuclear energy realm. Idaho National Laboratory is one of the 3 applied energy. I'm having problems advancing my slides. One of the 3 applied Department of Energy national laboratories, the other being NREL, which focuses on renewable energy and energy efficiencies, and NETL, which focuses more on carbon related energy sources. We focus, our vision is well, we focus on nuclear energy. Again, as a way to introduce you to the laboratory, I wanted to show you our focus to our vision and mission first. So our vision here at the laboratory is to change the world's energy future and secure our critical infrastructure. Our mission is to discover, demonstrate, and secure innovative nuclear energy solutions. You can see that's a primary focus of our mission, and clean energy options and critical infrastructure. Wanted to, before I get into what's new, I wanted to talk a little bit about our past, because it really shapes where we're going in the future. We look forward now, particularly now, with a lot of thought about our past. And so what is now the Idaho National Laboratory? The site was originally formed back in 1949 as the National Reactor Testing Station. And as you all, I'm sure, know, at that point, nuclear energy didn't exist. We had just discovered fission a little more than 10 years, nuclear fission a little bit more than 10 years prior to that. And so things were moving very fast in terms of the development and the potential uses of nuclear fission. Within 2 years of forming the National Reactor Testing Station on the Idaho desert, we had the experimental breeder reactor, which actually is a sodium-cooled fast spectrum reactor, which even by today's standards is now considered an advanced reactor relative to the light water reactor technologies that we use throughout the world for commercial electricity generation. That period of time from 1949 on through the next several decades was an incredible period of innovation. 52 different reactors were demonstrated on the site that is now INL, and a whole lot of firsts occurred. The first U.S. city to be powered by nuclear energy occurred. The first submarine reactors, there's a strong tie between the site and the naval nuclear program. More than 40,000 reactor operators for the Navy were trained back in that period of time at INL. The first mobile nuclear power plant for the Army. The first demonstration of a self-sustained fuel cycle, that is taking fuel that was used in a reactor, separating out the good from the bad that's left over, and then recycling that fuel back into the reactor. As well as a number of these reactors were focused on the safety of light water reactor system technologies, which were then subsequently commercialized in the U.S. and then around the world. And of course, that's what the Navy is based on, is light water reactor technologies. So at some point, we transitioned. We transitioned from innovation and developing new reactor concepts to commercialization and use for electricity generation. And as that happened, so did the transition in terms of the nuclear energy R&D portfolio. And in 1994, it was actually a decision made to change the mission of the laboratory to be more focused on environmental cleanup than actually nuclear energy research. And so a number of these reactors, research reactors like the Experimental Breeder Reactor 2, the Transient Test Reactor, and so forth, were shut down. You know, in a little bit before 2005, it was recognized that we actually needed a national program focused on nuclear energy for the future. And in 2005, what is now the Idaho National Laboratory was formed. And then I'll stop there and get back into what's new in just when I come back to that. So I also want to give you a perspective on the Idaho National Laboratory site. So it was selected partly because of its remoteness. So it's it's basically high desert in Idaho. It's in the southeast portion of the state, and it's 890 square miles of desert space. And actually, it's so large that we're almost like our own state. In fact, it rivals the size, it's smaller than, but rivals the size of Rhode Island. So on this site, we have many different sites. You can think about almost little towns on the site where different research missions are accomplished. The Naval Reactors Facility also has a place on our site, as well as our different current and past reactor sites. We currently have 4 operating reactors on the site and quite a number of radiological and nuclear facilities. So a whole lot of investment by the U.S. taxpayer in this site and the facilities. While I'm focusing on nuclear, I'll also mention that because of the size of the site, we have our own grid. We can separate our grid. We have our own substations. We have our own rail lines and so on and so forth. There's just an incredible amount of infrastructure that supports energy testing at scale, including physical testing related to grid security and resiliency. While again, I'm going to focus on the nuclear parts, as we're divided into 5 directorates. I'm speaking for the Nuclear Science and Technology Directorate, or I represent that. We have 2 other directors focused on nuclear as well to support the nuclear energy research mission. First, let me talk a little bit about what we do. So our primary expertise is in nuclear fuels and materials development, and that's driven largely by the facilities that we have. Our test reactor, including our advanced test reactor, which is the highest powered thermal test reactor in the world. Its primary missions are twofold. One is for supporting the nuclear Navy, and one is supporting nuclear energy research and development. The Materials and Fuels Complex is a whole set of facilities that enable nuclear materials and fuels development, testing, and examination at multiple scales. Then before I move on and talk a little bit more about what's new in nuclear, I wanted to talk a little bit about the other 2 directorates so you get the full perspective of the Idaho National Laboratory. So we have an Energy and Environment Science and Technology organization, They are the national resource for auto battery testing, do a tremendous amount of work on biofuels, advanced manufacturing, advanced transportation, but also renewable energy and energy efficiencies. The folks there work very closely with NREL and other national laboratories on intermittent energy sources. And then the National Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. This is one that might be interesting to have speak to you at a future date because of their expertise in physical control system cyber, as well as physical security. We have centers related to energy resiliency, grid resiliency, and again, it goes to our strengths in terms of the physical assets we have. We're also very, very well known, again, for for cybersecurity and particularly control system cyber. We work very closely with them from the nuclear energy perspective on nuclear non-proliferation and safeguards activities as well. So thinking about what's new in nuclear, this is actually where I wanted to spend the most time. And what's new really and what our priorities are. So first, what's new, those of you, I assume many of you don't know that much about what's going on in nuclear energy. And but because we're a regulated environment, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is the regulator of nuclear energy systems in the U.S. And because we have a very established light water reactor fleet and system that has really almost stifled innovation. We've been very incremental in innovation in nuclear energy over the last several decades. We've basically just been operating a light water reactor fleet and making improvements on their performance and economics. And going forward, in terms of being competitive in the current electricity markets, we feel like it's very important that we change, that we offer different nuclear energy products and integrate them with intermittent sources in ways that are different than what we've been doing, which is what I'll talk more about in a moment. But thinking about the national nuclear energy portfolio, I do want to mention our three priorities, and that is preserve the existing fleet. In many cases, the existing plants are not economic in the electricity market of today. It depends on the region of the country, of course. Replacement and expansion of that existing fleet to reach our clean energy goals. A number of the previous speakers spoke to the clean energy goals that are being established at various levels and also outside of this country. So many countries are setting targets, utilities and states are all setting targets. In fact, several major companies are setting targets with respect to emissions. And I believe very strongly that we cannot achieve those targets without the expansion of nuclear energy. And then, of course, there's always the question of the nuclear waste, the spent fuel that comes out of these, and the proper management and disposition of those materials. So speaking back to clean energy and what a driver it has been for nuclear, one of the things that's changed a lot, again, what's sort of new, and new is relative, was the private sector interest in advanced nuclear technologies. And these are technologies beyond the current light water reactor technologies. In the early 2010 kind of period, there was an awful lot of companies that saw potential market share there and had innovative concepts that they wanted to move forward and provide another clean energy source for the nation and frankly for the world. The challenge they ran into was how to engage the national laboratory complex. There's 17 different national laboratories. If we had all of them here today, each one of them would say they can do most things. And I don't mean to be unfair to my colleagues, but they really have a lot of capabilities. And so it becomes unclear which laboratory to go to for what purposes and what expertise. And then wading through the various governmental or laboratory agreements to do work at these laboratories can be a little daunting for some of these companies as well. In recognition of this need, a newish initiative in the Department of Energy's Office of Nuclear Energy was established called GAIN, or the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear. And this was basically to provide a front door for private companies to come in and navigate through the National Laboratory Complex with a focus on nuclear innovation, providing a comprehensive resource for the entire laboratory system with respect to nuclear at all development stages. streamlined access to software capabilities, computing capabilities, the experimental facilities that are quite unique to nuclear and actually quite expensive and actually prohibitive for most private companies to try to duplicate. They represent literally billions of dollars of federal government investment over decades, as well as the expertise and the legacy data. I mentioned the 52 reactors on our site. Those reactors generated just incredible amounts of data. Some of it is available and some of it has not been readily available. And so to help provide their access to those as well. And then lastly, to provide access to the regulatory system and understanding. Many of these new innovative companies really don't have experience engaging with the regulatory process in general and the the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in particular. So then the next evolution in terms of their private development was that you move from developing small scale technologies, fuels, for example, cladding materials, to actually demonstrating new reactor concepts. And so in 2018, the National Reactor Innovation Center was authorized through the NECA Act. And then in 2019, the National Reactor Innovation Center was actually established at the Idaho National Laboratory. And this is actually really kind of a new national reactor testing station. When I think back to 1949, I think back to where we are and then forward to where we are today. It's a lot like what we were trying to do in the very early days. But of course, we have so much more capability than we had at that point in time, whether you're thinking about the computers, the microscopic capabilities, the advanced manufacturing capabilities, and so on, that we now can apply to nuclear innovation. So NRIC is about 1 year developed. It also followed with the Department of Energy Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program funding opportunity announcement in the fiscal year 20 legislation that actually provided $230 million for reactor demonstrations, an unprecedented, at least in my career, amount of funding to go to demonstrating advanced nuclear reactors. So we are working with multiple developers through the National Reactor Innovation Center to provide the facilities, the sites, the capabilities that they need to demonstrate reactors. In fact, we are working with 11 different companies about siting their reactor concepts on the Idaho National Laboratory site because of the unique capabilities and facilities that we have on that site. And also key other issues with respect to challenges for demonstrating reactors are access to the high-assay, low-enriched uranium feedstock for fuels that these reactor companies need. There are many other challenges that we are working through, but in the interest of time, I'll leave that maybe for questions. So many people don't see much progress happening in advanced reactors, and with this slide, I wanted to show you my vision for how things will progress in the advanced reactor area. In fact, just to take a step back, many people see the reactor shutting down, not new reactors coming online. Depending on how much you follow nuclear, you may be aware that several reactors have closed in the last several years related to economic performance. These are reactors that were perfectly fine. There was no safety or performance issues other than they could not compete financially in the markets that they were in. Others for political reasons, like Indian Point in New York, will be shutting down, or actually has shut down, and reactors in California like Diablo Canyon that I would say are more for political reasons. So, but moving from the current fleet to looking forward, the real driver has not been there for large amounts of electricity generation. There are exceptions in the southeast, and the 2 plants at Vogtle, the AP1000s, are being completed right now. But in many parts of the country, they simply just don't need large amounts of energy all at once. And of course, there's also the challenge with nuclear, with these large plants, of the cost and schedule associated with building new large nuclear energy plants. But where we have seen a lot of market pull is in very small systems, and including small modular reactors. So think reactors anywhere from a megawatt, which is in a few megawatts, which is what I'll refer to as micro reactors, all the way up to a few hundred megawatts, which is the range that are typically referred to as small modular reactors. So where we see things happening a lot is in the very small scale, driven by needs from remote communities in places like Alaska and Canada, remote mining applications, and federal applications. The Department of Defense is working on a small mobile reactor to basically break their reliance on diesel fuel, as well as reliable, resilient power sources for domestic and international bases. These systems offer incredible opportunity for us for innovation as they're small, simple, and we can move forward in things that we simply can't do with traditional large-scale reactors, things like autonomously controlled reactors, where you have no operators there, no security force, and so forth, where you could potentially, depending on cost and depending on operational deployment, compete with anywhere that you have currently a diesel generator. It also provides an opportunity to work through the regulatory regime. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is used to regulating and approving large light water reactor technologies, but not so much in the advanced technologies. We're working with multiple companies and believe we'll demonstrate at least 2 microreactors on our site by 2025, followed by commercial deployment. But there's also a need for larger scale reactors, both domestically and particularly internationally. And so we're also working on that in that area as well. Our versatile test reactor, it would represent a new test reactor for the nation to address the fact that we have no fast neutron spectrum testing capabilities. Fast reactors like sodium-cooled fast reactors offer tremendous potential, not only in the economics, but also in the sense of energy usage, generating less spent nuclear fuel through recycling. I mentioned that the Department of Energy stood up the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program. They will award 2 awards, presumably by the end of the calendar year, for 2 companies to demonstrate their reactors within 5 to 7 years. And so that is happening right now. So by 2028, we would expect that those 2 reactors would be demonstrated. And then on the small modular reactor area, we're working with a company called NuScale and a utility collective called UAMPS to demonstrate the NuScale reactor technology. Actually, this will be a commercial deployment, not a technical demonstration on our site. Their intentions are to have the first NuScale module operational by 2029. So you can see over the next decade, we're going to have a really large amount of activity and demonstration of advanced nuclear systems to demonstrate their viability in supporting national and global clean energy aspirations. The last thing I wanted to briefly talk about is the use of nuclear for things other than electricity. On the left-hand side, you see what we do today. It's nuclear is base load, direct electricity, nothing else. Well, when we look at integrating with intermittent sources that are obviously going to continue to expand, we need to be more flexible. We need to have ways that we efficiently integrate with those sources. And so we have a whole research portfolio. We work a lot with NREL, but with other laboratories as well, in a different vision for an integrated energy system where nuclear can be used with these intermittent sources in a variety of ways. And particularly when the electricity isn't needed, generating other products with that energy, whether that's industrial usage for steam, hydrogen generation, for example, and desalination and other things that energy can be used for, as well as concepts that are more responsive to the energy demands. So more what we would refer to as load following capabilities. So rather than just running full on when less energy is needed, you can also scale back more easily. We do that to a limited degree in this country right now with our plants, but there's value in doing more of that. But there is a challenge there with respect to revenue from nuclear. It's actually better for most of our systems to be able to do something else with that energy when the electricity is not needed. Recognizing this, we're working with several utilities, particularly in the Midwest and the Southwest, related to demonstrating hydrogen production at their existing plants today. And we are working with them on physical demonstrations that will be done over the next couple of years. The other thing I want to note here is that advanced reactors, many of them run at higher temperatures. which offer additional possibilities with what you do with their high temperature steam. But this is not necessarily a new area for the laboratory. We've been working on this quite a bit for the last several years, but certainly is a major focus in the laboratory. And so with that, I'll stop and try to give you some insights into the Idaho National Laboratory. Again, we are one of the 3 applied energy laboratories, our main focus being on nuclear energy. And I personally see quite a lot of demonstrations being done over the next couple of years. I think those are critical for people who are critical of nuclear energy to see that these systems are viable, operational experience, and cost effective, because of course we have a number of examples that I'm sure many of you have seen where nuclear projects have been over budget, over schedule, and do not look viable for the future. And of course we have to fix that, and that is our focus. So with that, I'll see if there's any questions.
John, thank you for the good news coming out of Idaho National Lab. Nuclear power is an essential element to the energy security of the United States. It will continue to be, and it's looked upon as a green and sustainable technology in many other parts of the world. So thank you for your presentation. Toward that end, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts you could share with us about the applicability of some of the small modular reactors and the technologies you discussed today to serve the needs of some of the billion people in the developing world that are looking for green energy, clean energy, that is nuclear. Are these technologies a possibility for them in meeting their needs?
So thanks for the question, and that's a great question, and actually a discussion that we have within the nuclear community quite a bit. For many countries around the world, they do need large amounts of energy, where these small systems are not necessarily what they need long term. It just depends on the application. But I do see these very small systems as a way to get experience with new nuclear without such large cost investments and on much shorter timescales. But I do see them as a pathway, but their applications, although I have to admit, I'm seeing them grow incredibly. For example, who would have thought that cargo shipping had so much carbon emissions? And well, for those of you who are familiar with it, you probably know, but I didn't realize that. There are so many of those kinds of applications where these small nuclear systems can make a large difference. But ultimately, for major countries that are very, I'd say, energy starved, we are going to need large nuclear systems, or small modular reactor to large nuclear systems. So countries like Kenya, Saudi Arabia, and then of course even Eastern European countries like Poland and Czech Republic, they're more interested in the small modular reactors. So think a couple 100 megawatts to gigawatt scale. By the way, Poland just announced the other day that they intend to pursue 6 gigawatt scale nuclear energy plants. So that's the scale of their need. And I think to enable that, we have current designs, by the way. The Westinghouse AP1000 I've referred to multiple times is anyone can go purchase those today. But when we look at advanced systems that offer, I think, greater potential for economic safety and security, those are probably a decade out or more. I'm sorry, I can't hear you for some reason.
Sorry about that. There's a number of other questions we could ask, but in the interest of time and keeping on schedule, we'll have to defer them. I'd like to send them to you. Perhaps we could post them online after the event. But I want to thank you for a very interesting, informative presentation about nuclear technology. It often gets overlooked in the national discussions, and it's good to hear that such interesting work is being done at the lab. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.